first connected with my guest in this episode about 2 years ago. I saw him on the local news as he was featured for his work at one of the St. Louis area YMCA locations, and it talked about how he's done so much to give back to the community. Marcus Wilson serves as the executive director of the Monsanto Family YMCA, which is pretty much in the heart of St. Louis. Before that, he was part of the men's basketball staff at St. Louis University, serving as the video coordinator. And before that, he had a phenomenal basketball career in college at the University of Evansville, where he was the 1999 Player of the Year, and that led to him having a professional career overseas. Now, in a previous episode, I sat down with him and we discussed his past, present, and eventual future. And I've uploaded that to the podcast feed, so be sure to check that out. I've titled it the Flashback Podcast with Marcus Wilson. But in this particular episode, I caught up with Marcus again, and I wanted to find out what was new with him. I knew that he's found a new interest as a college basketball on-air analyst. I wanted to see how that was going. But I also talked to him about the current state of college basketball and just other things going on, not only in St. Louis, in the community, but also just some of the things going on with him personally. And we also touch on a new project that he is working on for 2020 for next year. So without further ado, here is Marcus Wilson on Persons of Interest. Well, I think now I officially have my second return podcast guest. And technically, we didn't record on this Persons of Interest podcast. This was back when I was at the Valley. I was recording the Inside the Valley podcast, and I saw this young man who is a Valley alum, 1999 Player of the Year. And I'm pleased to get him back because he's had a lot of exciting things going on in addition to some of that happened after our first conversation back. God, that might have been 2 or 3 years ago.
It was 3 years ago.
Yeah. So that is the voice of the 1999 Missouri Valley Conference Player of the Year. He scored, 12 points in 10 minutes? 18 minutes and 8 minutes against Kansas in the NCAA tournament in 99. Marcus Wilson, University of Evansville alum. Appreciate you taking time, sir. This is a pleasure for me to sit down and talk, and we've gotten a chance to talk to each other a little bit more, keep in touch. So I'm glad to see you're doing well, and thanks for letting me stop in.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Like you said, it's been good staying in touch over the last few years, and I'm a little bit more familiar with this setup now. So feel free to ask whatever you want, and we'll have a good conversation here.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a little bit of what you got going on, maybe some after the new year with a podcast project of your own. But I'm curious, so I want to use this sort of as a follow-up from when we last talked, because we talked about your story. What I really appreciated was that there were so many people that are fans now, but still a lot of people that continuously are fans that know who you are, but it's a new generation of folks, new generation of college kids. Evansville's a little bit different than when you were there. And now you got your jersey retired there too. So you're in the rafters. I totally forgot about that. Don't want to bury that lead. But it's one of those things where we've had so many great players come through the Missouri Valley Conference and do some unique things where you're definitely one of those. And it's now you're enshrined, like I said, with the jersey hanging in the rafter. But it goes beyond that for you. Obviously, now you're the executive director here in St. Louis of the YMCA. But I think the one part of the story that always sort of, for me as a native St. Louis person, is that you're not even from St. Louis. And here you are, basketball career off to the side. You're doing something above and beyond for this community that is hopefully changing lives in a positive way. Those stories don't get talked about a whole lot.
Right.
So I guess my first question is, how and why do you sort of feel connected and feel the need to want to go out and do something to make a difference for young people?
Well, yeah, I think, I'm the youngest of 15 kids. A lot of people know that I was raised in the house with 11. It was 11 kids. So my dad had 4 in his first marriage, and they lived with his first wife. But there were 11 of us growing up, and so I know what it means to and what it feels like to not have enough, and I know what it feels like to wish that people were there to help support a little bit more, and then also just, my experiences through basketball. I love being in the locker room with guys who are white, black, rich, poor, from all different parts of the country. And so you get to know different people's stories. And then me being able to play 11 years in Europe opened up my mind and my perception of the world to a whole nother level. And so now I'm able to, I think, empathize with people a lot better. And so when I see an opportunity to help, I just feel like that's what people should do. I know people, I think the world would be a better place if everybody helped each other a little bit more. But I just think with me being, basically having nothing at the start of my life and then being able to have a little bit of something playing professionally, and knowing everything in between, it just makes it easier for me to empathize and understand and connect with people. And then luckily I have the ability to impact their lives. And so that's what gives me satisfaction these days. Instead of making 3-point shots, I like seeing people do better because of things that, resources I was maybe able to provide or being a part of their lives or whatever. And so that gives me a lot of satisfaction. So for now, this is what I love to do. And I get, like I said, I sleep well at night feeling like I'm making a difference.
The YMCA is such it's a community center. I mean, you get people coming in and working out. You'll have events here. People that may not be members here coming in for these other events. And you all do these other things outside of this building that you go out and, talking to folks along Page, along this neighborhood, trying to give back and help out. When you see things like the crime in St. Louis, make no mistake about it, we all know there's an issue, especially this summer with so many young people being victims of it. Does that sort of tug on the heartstrings even more that you want to do something to help? Like, how do you react when you see some of the stories out there, especially in this community?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're doing a lot of good work here. And so, we do $5 swim lessons. And so we reduce the price of swim lessons so everyone can afford it. And we just did this Thanksgiving basket giveaway where we supplied families, 57 families, and with a Thanksgiving dinner. We collaborate with Spire, where we help people pay. Well, Spire pays their outstanding bill debt, and we do back to school gyms and all that stuff. And so I start feeling like we're making a big difference. And then things like this summer happen where you see a lot of youth dying in the community I serve. And to answer your question, how it makes me feel, there were times where I literally went home and was like, man, am I really doing what I think I'm doing? Because I feel like I'm making a difference, but there's still kids dying. So obviously I'm not doing enough. And so I get discouraged. Some nights I need people to pick me up, need somebody, a friend or family member to kind of remind me, that I can't change the world in a day. I think somebody was just saying that, the old story of the person who's walking along the beach, throwing back starfish. And somebody's like, man, you're not going to save them all. And he's like, well, I just saved that one. And I try to remember that. And what I'm doing is that I might not be able to save them all, but I do know for a fact there's been people whose lives have been changed. And so I try to lean on that, but also stay humble that that's happening, but also stay hungry to want to do more and have even more change, hopefully.
Yeah, it's funny. So, of course, we follow each other on social media, and I see some of the stories. One that jumps out for me most recently, a young man who got some shoes, played basketball.
Yep.
It's already, we know the stories about, especially with young African-American men in this community. This is a place for them to sort of come and find, the chance, opportunity to become a leader, to do something special.
Yep.
When you all see that happening, and you tweeted yourself, hey, small things can add up, and you can see that person go on to do something special. Can you think of any stories like that, additional ones that you're like, nah, that kid who we didn't know, but it turned a corner when that happened?
Well, I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know. I do know that there's been a lot of kids who have left maybe, or went off and done something. And then you get a call back like a year later. I got a call from a kid who worked here. I gave him multiple chances. And I'm to the point to where I don't really like terminating people. That's not part of my job that I enjoy. And so I generally try to lead with a lot of grace and give people opportunities. This kid was late and was just doing some things that were just really hurting the culture of my branch. And eventually I had to let him go. It was to the point where I felt like I was going to lose credibility as a leader if I didn't let him go, because other people would have started being like, why is he getting more chances than me? And then about a year later, he called me back and came into my office and said, man, I just want to say thank you for all you taught me. It's hard work out there, and I didn't want to work hard before, but a lot of things I'm learning right now, I keep thinking back to what you were telling about how hard the work you got to put in to be successful. I tell kids, the only time success comes before work is in the dictionary. And so things like that, when they come back and say, man, I know what you meant and I get it and I'm applying it. That happens often. And, and then also like the kid with the shoes it's one of those things where, you want to keep kids encouraged. I'm very data driven. So I've been able to that's how I fundraise. I show people the data. And there's a stat in St. Louis that if a kid doesn't graduate, if a black kid in this community, it may be citywide, but I know in this community, if he doesn't graduate high school by the age of 27, there's a 80% chance that he'll be dead or in prison. Mm-hmm. And so wanting to make sure that kids graduate for me is a huge deal. So even though that kid got a pair of shoes and he may just think it's the shoes, part of the reason I gave him the shoes was he has a 3.1 GPA. And I said, I need you to get your GPA up to 3.3. So this kid who hasn't had a new pair of shoes in 2-3 years is now in school, making sure he's not missing, making sure he's studying because he wants to get these shoes. Right. And the shoes is just a little $100 thing. Right. But if I can get his grades up and get him focused on school to the point to where he graduates, he's not part of that statistic. Those are intangibles that people can never measure, but I know it's happening, and so that's a big reason behind I do what I do. So
you ever think of yourself as a second teacher or a second counselor to some of these kids?
I don't think of myself that way, but I know it is that way. I don't think like, man, I got to go mentor these kids today, but I do know. Just sort of happens. I do know it happens, man. I was just posting on social media about this other day that sometimes I post about things my Y is doing or an award I may have gotten or whatever. And some people may look at it like I'm boasting, like I'm promoting myself. But the people in this community don't see it that way. I have more parents come to me and say, hey, Marcus, I saw you. You were just walked in. And this guy was like, I just saw you on social media, man. I know that guy, right? There's not enough positive examples. Right. And so then those parents that say that to me, they're showing their kids, man, look at that guy right there. Like, you can be like that. And I don't look at myself that way, but I know in the inner city growing up, a lot of times there's 3 pathways that poor kids see themselves. They see success as money. So the 3 ways they see themselves getting money that most other African Americans in their eyes are athletes, entertainers, or drug dealers. Right. One of those 3 ways, you're going to be able to drive down the street in a nice car. And, that's what you want as a youth. And so the fact that I'm able to do this and they're able to see it on social media, it makes them proud. They show their kids, hey, you don't have to be a basketball player. You don't have to be a musician. You don't have to be on the street selling drugs. You can get back to your community and look at this, that's a picture of success. And so that is an inspiration of mine to make sure that I'm trying to be a positive example. And if it comes through the form of mentoring or teaching or however they see it, then so be it. But as long as it's making a difference.
So it's funny you say that because you say you don't have to be an athlete, you don't have to be an entertainer. But when you're growing up, you get the opportunity to go to college and play basketball. You play professionally. Did you think that was your way to, this is how I'm going to make it? Definitely. Basketball was in the end goal. At what point and we'll get to the coaching, but at what point did you say, all right, I got to put basketball on pause?
Well, growing up, I just remember those 3 options was what it felt like to me. Now that I'm older, I realize how small my view of the world was, but being a kid, that's what I saw. And so,
and you're not the only one. I mean, every kid's like that.
And my dad had a talk with me. He set me down in 7th grade. I'll never forget it. Set me down. I was playing football at the time as well. And he said, son, I got some news to tell you. Me and your mom can't afford to send you to college. We can't take out any more loans. We don't make enough money. And so here's the thing. But you're going to college. You're not going to be sitting around here working at McDonald's, selling drugs, or living in my house until you're 25. That's not going to happen. So, and I was like, I'm sitting there like a seventh grader, like, what I'm going to do? And he was like, well, here's the thing. You're going to go to college on one of two ways. Get a basketball scholarship or get an academic scholarship or both. But one way or another, you're going to have to use your skills to pay yourself through college. And I was like, well, how do I do that? And he was like, well, in my opinion, you're not going to be good enough in football to do it. So, yeah. So I would suggest quitting that, but we're going to quit football. And we're just going to start focusing on basketball. And you're going to start getting better grades. You're going to focus on your grades, and we're going to focus on basketball. And that's how you're going to get to college. 7th grade. I was just like, all right. I just rolled with it. And then I just got serious about it. I was a short little chubby kid and I didn't know how it was going to work. And then the summer of my 8th grade year, I went from 5'9", 165 to 6'1", 165. I grew 4 inches, didn't gain any weight, just started stretching out. And that's when I started getting a little bit better. And yeah, then that's what kind of took me to where I'm at with basketball. In terms of you said, when did I start putting it on pause and start shifting some of this other?
After professional career, obviously, or after coaching?
Well, yeah, I after I got done playing professionally, I quit in the middle of my season. I remember it was December 10th, 2010. I remember because I came home December 16th, and that's my wife's birthday. So December 10th, I'm sitting there. My wife and my son were back in Atlanta. She had moved back because she had got a job offer that was really good. I felt like, hey, you go ahead and get started. So we're both not trying to, she had been living with me in Europe for the last few years. So a plane goes overhead in Atlanta and we're on Skype. And my son, who was 3 at the time, says, hey, Dad, when are you going to be on the next airplane coming home? And for some reason, that line right there, it just punched me right in the chest. Like I felt it to the core. And I was like, I almost cried, literally. And I said, I'll be home soon, son. Wife got back on the phone. I said, you know what? I'm done. Like right there, just made my decision. And I came home. And so then I started working in Atlanta and moved my way up and was executive director at a Aaron Sales and Lease and then Chick-fil-A and had a really good job with Chick-fil-A, had an upward pathway to do more in that organization. And then the Final Four came to Atlanta and all my old friends were there for the Final Four, whether they were coaching in the Final Four or, just all the coaches come to the Final Four. So I'm down there hanging out with them and they're talking about the college coaching and kids and this, that, and the other. And at the time I was coaching AAU in Atlanta. So I was already getting a little bit of my basketball fix from that. But I was like, man, I think I could do this. Like I know the game pretty well and I play professionally and this, that, and the other. And so the basketball bug started coming back. And then that's when I started trying to get back into the game. And that's when I got hired at St. Louis University. Came here for 3 years. First year, we go to the tournament. We're ranked 8th in the country, 19-game win streak, win the A-10 regular season, 5 seed in NCAA tournament, beat NC State in that classic first round game where we were down I want to say 15 with 5 minutes to go, came back, beat them, and then lost to Louisville in the second round. So year one, it's like, man, this basketball stuff is easy, right? Like, why haven't I been doing this my whole life? And then the next 2 years, we sucked. We were, I want to say 10 and 21 and 11 and 20 respectively and got fired. And at that point I was like, man, I can't keep moving all across the country every 3 to 4 years. Cause that's what you're really going to do. Either you're going to go somewhere and you're going to lose and get fired like we did, or you're going to go somewhere and you're going to win and go to the NCAA tournament. And then you're probably going to get an opportunity to go somewhere else. So either way, you're going to be moving every 3 to 5 years. And with my son being his age, and I had already missed a lot of time in his life of me playing professionally and traveling and moving around so much, I just decided that I wanted to do something a little bit more stable, where I could still get some of the same satisfaction that I got from basketball. Like I'm still recruiting. I recruit people for my organization. I'm still coaching. I'm coaching up my staff, coaching up the youth here. I still have access to youth sports because I have youth sports here where I'm at. I still get a lot of the same things. It's just not a scoreboard up there is the scoreboard of life that I'm playing. And in order to make me not be that vulnerable to leave a good job and go back into coaching again, that was one of the main reasons where I talked to you 3 years ago when I was like, hey, I want to get into this color commentating thing. And so that has filled my bucket tremendously to be able to do that and still feel like I'm a part of the game, but yet still have a full-time job that's a lot more stable than college coaching, you know.
I'm glad you said that. So for those, I'm going to dig up the first episode we did, have to post that into the podcast feed. So we didn't dig too much here now about, you know, Indiana kid, how you got to University of Evansville, your career there, 1999 player of the year. You guys go to the NCAA tournament. You had the special game against Kansas. Obviously now, was it last year before that they retired your jersey?
I think that was last year.
Last year?
2 years ago or last year? It's been a crazy couple of years.
You're getting old.
Yeah, I am getting old.
well, anyway, that just says how special of a time that was for you.
Yeah.
So, but long story short, that leads to me seeing a story about you here in St. Louis, connecting. We recorded that podcast, and that's when you said, hey, I want to do this. I want to get into color comments. Like, what can I do? Yeah. And so I went and talked to Jack Watkins. Hey, he's got a itch that is sort of curious. Like, I didn't want to say nothing, but he goes, well, did he say he said he's willing to learn. He just said he wants to do it. So, all right. Well, it hit me because we had just started the ESPN 3 thing at that point. And I said, I have an idea. And I didn't even tell Jack. I was like, hey, maybe just call Evansville because we have all of the schools. So for folks that don't know, all of the schools in Missouri Valley Conference, once we started doing the ESPN 3, broadcast not just basketball, all their sports on ESPN Plus and ESPN 3 now. So there is the need to have talent, color commentator and analyst to do it. So Braden Pretch, fantastic. The kid went to Evansville, and I remember connecting with him when I first started working at the Valley.
Yeah.
Something special about that kid, I'm telling you.
He's great.
Did his graduate school also in the Valley at Southern Illinois in Carbondale, and really got good at doing live event production and things like that. Sent an email to him, and they said, well, why not? Let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
You know, a guy that played in the league, the guy that, you know, was just from here, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
You did games to Evansville. You have the opportunity to do some games to the Valley. So we haven't talked since then.
Right.
So I've watched you. I've seen you do games with Tom Ackerman, Kyle Peach, you know, just the guys from Evansville. So I know what they're capable of. They've been named production team of the year. The Valley gives out a little crew award. So what's that world like for you now? Because I know you got your own little segment that I want to ask about, but how have you sort of fit in at doing that? Because that's something different that you hadn't done before, but you wanted to do.
Man, Derek, when I tell you I love it. Like, I love it. It is, it brings me so much satisfaction. And to kind of circle back, I remember we finished our podcast, and I was telling somebody this story the other day. We finished the podcast, and I was getting ready to walk up out of the office. And I said, you know what? In my mind, I'm thinking, let me just throw this out there. And I said to you, like, hey, man, I think I kind of want to get into this type of thing. And you're like, really? Really? We were just talking about that. You know, like maybe we can get some former players and get some more diversity on the set and whatever. So took me into the office. Again, like you said, talked to Jack. I had no real prior experience. But then, I knew the game just from playing it, but then also just from being a coach the last few years, being able to view the game from a different lens.
Right. And there's value in that. Yes, I think you see the analysts that are out there, they're former coaches, former players. Yep. That's why they're there.
100%. That has helped me so much. I don't think I would be able to do it well without that. And so then, like you said, I think I was getting my jersey I was there for something else. They were honoring me for something. And they said, hey, let's, bring you down at halftime, do this interview. And then how about you just put on the headset and we'll keep you on the first 4 minutes of the second half. I'm like, all right.
So was that the tryout? Did you know it at the time?
I didn't know I was on tryout. Right. So I put the headset on and I'm just calling stuff as I see it. Like, I'm really good at, even when I was at SLU coaching, I'm really good at seeing the set and formation the team is in. So if they're in a 4-out-1-in, or if they're starting in a box, or whatever they start in, I'm able to see that and then look at all the options that they do. So if I see that set and then they do a couple plays, I know what they're going to do based on their pass entry, based on how this guy's whatever. I'm pretty good at that.
Yeah.
Which helps with my color commentating. But anyway, was just calling it like I was seeing it. After about 4 minutes, they were like, hey, that was pretty good. You want to stay on for another 4 minutes? Sure. So we do another 4 minutes. Then the next day, I get a text from Braden or Tom Benson, it was one of those two, and said, hey, Marcus, you were pretty good last night. Any chance you want to do some more games? I said, heck yeah. And they were like, well, these are the 6 games that we have left remaining that we don't have filled. Pick whichever ones you want. I looked at my schedule. I could make 5 of them work. Scheduled those last 5. And the rest is history. And then I did pretty good there. And then that summer, I met with Jack Watkins, and he had been listening a little bit. And I told him I wanted to do even more. And I said, hey, I'm humble on this. I realize I'm new, but I'll do whatever it takes to get more opportunity. If you want me to go get more experience, or
you originally told me, do I need to practice calling high school games?
Yeah,
you were willing to do that.
Yeah, I understand. Sometimes you got to start at the bottom, and I've started at the bottom my whole life. So this was nothing new, and so I just said, I'll do whatever. And he listened to, I think, some of the podcasts. I mean, not podcasts, but some of the shows, and then they gave me 2 games through the MVC the next year, and now this year I have 3 games, and so it's just slowly been building up, and I feel like I'm getting better at it, and I'm a lot more comfortable. So it all started with, had I taken 4 more steps to walk out that office, I would not be doing this right now. And I turned and said, hey, I want to get in the color commentating. Do you know how I could, boom, and then the rest is history. So
well, and it's unique at the Valley because they sort of control. It's like they have the agreements with all the TV production folks and the ESPNs and the Fox and West's of the world, but they sort of still control the product. Yeah. And that goes back to when the Valley first started doing TV, which is different from a conference of that size, where you have it run in-house, not just, these are the games you want to put on, you do all the work for us. There's ownership there. So that helps.
Yep.
So I'm curious, someone that played, there was TV when you played. You're not that old. You have a different sort of viewpoint or different respect for the play-by-play and the analysts and the camera people, since you're now behind the microphone and you have the headset on, you can hear what's happening in the headset, people talking to you. Yeah. We're going to cue this up.
Yep.
How do you sort of take all that in now, knowing you played the games? Like, oh, is that how this works?
Yeah. It's been a great learning experience. I've done so many interviews in my life to where it came really naturally. Honestly, I think that I'm, considering I just started, I feel like I'm a little bit ahead of the curve. I still obviously I listen to my games and try to figure out what I could have done better. And I'm in some speech classes to make sure that I don't say stuff like so
I struggle with it too while recording these things.
Yeah, on air. And so Toastmasters. I actually went to my first Toastmasters. Anybody who's familiar with that, it's a public speaking thing where they count how many times you say so, and And so just trying to eliminate that out of my vocabulary when I'm on air. So I've been really intentional about trying to make myself better, because it's going to make me a better public speaker and a better leader when I'm speaking to my staff and my community anyway. But no, I think that is something. Now that I've coached, if I didn't coach, I think it would have been very hard, but it's been very easy for me to pick up. And I'm hoping that this is a career that I can make full time one day. Like, my dream is to be like Jay Billis one day. I know it may take 15 years, but I'm still young enough. I feel like I can get there.
What's one part of it that you've really enjoyed the most? Is there any one part that you're like, I really love talking to the coach before the game and getting to know game plan, or I really love, the interaction on the headset? Is there any part of it? Because I remember when I put the headset on doing official stats and talent stats, which not a lot of people even realize that's part of it, to feed the stats to TV and all that stuff. Yep. But it's like a totally different viewpoint. Like it was really intriguing to sort of hear a producer and a director in the head. All right, graphics good on 1.
Yeah.
Graphic go. Camera 2. Like, that's a whole different world.
Yep.
Anything that popped out to you?
The 2 things, I think, the main things is I love being able to talk about the game, but then when the game's over, I get to go home to my normal job. Because as a coach, you're so invested, and if you make mistakes, you get fired. You know, and so here is just, I'm just analyzing it. So it's just a lot less pressure. And then, like you mentioned, Braden and Tom and those guys, I think that I've been really lucky to work with the crew that is that good. I've seen, and I'm not going to mention any names, but I've seen other schools broadcast.
Sure.
And our stuff is on a whole nother level. And just like you said, like Braden created like my own little segment that we do, like my certified bucket getter of the game. Like other people aren't doing that. And so I think it was a mutual, what I love about it, it was a mutual clash of respect. And what I mean by that is they're looking at me like Marcus Wilson, former all-time great here, jerseys in the rafter, and they're looking at me like that. And I'm looking at them like, man, you guys are doing what I love to do.
Right. Yeah.
And you're doing it right. And so I'm really humble, and I'm really like just glad to be a part of their team. And then they are excited that I'm a part of their team. And so there's an excitement that we're both working for and with each other. And it's not like they feel like, oh, you know, we're giving you a break by doing this. And I'm not like, hey, man, you know, I drive from St. Louis. I don't have to be doing this.
Right.
Like we both want to be there.
Yeah.
And so it's a great chemistry. And I feel like it's been great for me to get that experience now. So when I branch out and do other broadcasts, like I have a base of confidence and I have a base level of high professionalism versus if I would have started with some rinky-dink guys and then went to work with Scott Warman at the MVC player of the game of the week.
You're right.
You know,
right.
I see him every night on TV at Fox Sports calling Blues and Cardinals games. Yep. And the next thing you know, I'm sitting next to him calling an MVC game. Yep. But I have been prepared by Braden and Kyle Peach and guys like that. They were so professional. So I'm just thankful for that. That's been the best part of the experience.
It really has been sort of a best case scenario. Like with you here in St. Louis, Evansville is like one of the easier drives, just 2.5, 3 hours down 64 to get there. I mean, I remember when I was working at the Valley, we would drive there for 7:00 games on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night and just drive right back.
Yeah.
And come back. Yeah.
I don't waste vacation days. So I'll get up and come to work at 7 a.m, work from about 7 to 2:30. The game is at 6 in Evansville. So I'll leave here around 2:30. Takes me about 2 hours and 45 minutes. Well, actually, I'll leave here around 2. I'll get there around 4:30. Prep for the game. Game starts at 6. It's over at 8. I'll drive back. Yeah, it's a long day. I get back at like 10:45, 11. But it's worth it. I mean, I love what I'm doing. I'm doing what I love to do, and I'm not wasting vacation days by having to take the whole day off by going somewhere else. So it's been a match made in heaven.
So take me back to that game during the tryout. Do you remember anything specific about it at all? I think that was the jersey retirement. I really do.
Yeah, it might have been.
I don't remember who you all were playing. I don't remember much. I do remember watching. So I'm like, oh, he's on camera? Like, that happened fast.
Yeah.
Like, I think I just sent that email like not that long ago.
Yep.
You just calling like you see it? Like, just.
Yeah.
All right.
I did not know I was on tryout. I think if I would have known I was on tryout.
You'd been more nervous.
I would have been a lot more nervous. Yeah. But they were just talking to me about, you know, my career. My jerseys going up and what it meant. And so a lot of it was that. But then as the game was developing, they told me, they were like, if you see something, chime in. And, you know, everybody wants to be Tony Romo nowadays and kind of predict the play. It's impossible to do that at the basketball level as efficiently because football, you know, get the tackle, you go back, there's a huddle, they set up, and then there's like, hut. You know, you may have 10 seconds and Tony is able to identify formations and he has more time to see when a guy goes in motion, he sees the defense is in zone or man, he knows the reads. So with basketball, way more fluid. As soon as they cross half court, I'm able to do that, not at his level, but I'm able to do that because when they do set up in plays and I scout the team, so I'll watch a couple games of the team I'm about to call and I'll scout it just like I would, like if I was coaching a SLU. And when they're in this formation, this is what they're going to run. At the end of the shot clock, this is what they generally do. This is the guy who they like to get the ball to when it's crunch time. And so I have that knowledge in my head, almost like I was about to coach against them. And for both teams, for Evansville or whoever they're playing. And then when I see them set up, I call it like it's about to happen and it happens. And then people are like, oh, Marcus, you're pretty good at this. But again, I got that base from coaching.
Yeah. What was it like to hear your voice and see the play on ESPN SC Top 10 a couple times, I think.
Yeah. Well, we had 2 SportsCenter Top 10 plays, and man, it's just like I said, I'm like a kid in a candy shop. I don't think people understand how much I enjoy that. I want to be respectful to my primary job here at the Y, but man, like if I can't think of anything I would rather do than call a basketball game right now. Like if it's, I mean, other than other than spending some time with my kid, if there's anything, do you want to take a trip to Paris right now, or do you want to call a D1 college basketball game? Well, Paris can wait. I've already done that. Like I want to call this basketball game. So I don't remember talking about much that first tryout period. It's just I think I was able to like you said, like I said, call a couple things that were about to happen, and
it's
been great. Yeah.
Speaking of history, so. Evansville has had some history this early college basketball season already. So I'm sitting there and I remember this. I'm thinking to myself, okay, Kentucky's number one. I go back the last time we had a Valley team play number one ranked team, Northern Iowa, actually had North Carolina come to Cedar Falls. So I was talking to someone that I work with. This is, how does that game even happen? I go, well, they have these things called bye games and yada, yada, yada. And you go there. Typically going to just, they're paying for your travel. Now, I'm laying it out in a nice way because even though I don't work at the Valley anymore, I'm still rooting for everybody. I might root for Missouri State a little bit harder, but root for everybody still because I still have connections with everybody there. But I'm thinking to myself, okay, you never know what's going to happen. And did I think in reality in my head, we're just, I tweeted, I said, hey, remember, you play these games for the opportunity. So I sent out a tweet, and the last time I saw this opportunity was when Northern Iowa played North Carolina, and here's what happened, and they won that game. Yeah. Now, that game was in Cedar Falls, too, so, they were all pumped. They were all extremely pumped. So Evansville goes to Kentucky, and, all right, when I see those games, and I see, they got the lead after the first media timeout. Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah. I start thinking in my head, take it every 4 minutes. Yeah. Just every 4. Okay, we got through the first 4. Let's get to the next under media timeout. All right, we're halfway through. Let's get to the halftime point. Yeah. And they were in that game at halftime. I'm thinking, oh, okay, so this is, they came to play, or maybe Kentucky's not prepared. I don't know. Yeah. It got a little close at the end. Evansville does hang on to win the game. And at that point, the biggest upset of the season, because now we've had Duke.
F. Austin just being
and it's just continuous. Yeah. So this college basketball season is already, turned on its side. Yep. But I'm sitting there and I'm checking Twitter because I'm literally looking for 2 people to tweet something. Yeah. DJ Ballantyne, because I still follow him. I know he's overseas playing. Yeah. And you. I'm like, I know they see this game. Yeah. I know it. I see DJ tweet. He just tweets Evansville, all caps, 5 exclamation points. Right. So I'm like, there he is. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, this guy, he's no chance he's working. I'm like, it's 8:00 at night. What's going on? And lo and behold, I see the tweet pop up and I'm like, I've been waiting for him too. And I quote tweeted. Your initial thought when you see your alma mater come up with one of its biggest wins in school history?
Man, actually, I was working that night. What's so crazy, Derek, is I was in a board meeting. I was in a board meeting here at the Y, and I get out of the board meeting and I see I have 47 missed texts.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like,
what's going on?
We're either getting killed by 50 and people are rubbing it in, or we're in this game. And so I pull it up and I see we're in the game, and I get home and I watch the end of the game, and man, it was just a surreal feeling to see those guys beat Kentucky. In part, and I'll be transparent, I didn't think we had a chance. They played an exhibition game against USI, a D2 school in Evansville. Now, USI is no slouch. They made to the Final Four and Division II, and they're always good. They took Evansville to the wire. Yeah. Right? I think it went into overtime, actually. And then I called Evansville's first home game against Ball State. They got off to a good start, and then Ball State had the ball down 2 with 13 seconds to go. Now they missed the 3. They fouled. Evansville won by 4. So I'm thinking, you just got taken. You went to overtime against a D2 school, and you barely beat Ball State, who was picked like 3rd in the MAC. Like, they're about to go to Kentucky and get annihilated. And so then, sure enough, they won. And so I was just happy, really, really happy for them. I know that feeling of winning in front on national television. And, I never obviously had that level of an upset, but it was.
But you had big wins. I mean, you had wins to get to, conference tournament. Yep. Get to the NCAA, play those games. We had
some big games and some big wins. I just felt like that was really good for them. And I was really happy for them. And, I didn't know what was going to happen next. I did. I thought this then. I thought this now. Like if Evansville played Kentucky 10 times, I mean, let's be honest. Kentucky's probably going to win 9. They were just really good that night. Kentucky probably, came in not as focused as they should have been. But Evansville's really inconsistent right now because even after that, they beat IU Kokomo. Was 3-0. Everybody's like, we need to be ranked. And I saw the video of who else wants to get on the Evansville bandwagon. And I'm like, man, pump the brakes. Like we're 3-0. Like it's not 30-0 yet. And so sure enough, lost the next 3. And like I said, I've seen them play, and the problem is they're just too inconsistent. DeAndre Williams is a stud. I think you can count on him for about, if he's not in foul trouble, count on him for about 15, 20 points, 18 to 20, and about 8 rebounds. After that, I have no idea where the points are going to come from. Is the talent there? Yes. Sam Cunliffe started off at Arizona State, went to Kansas. University of Evansville getting a Kansas transfer. I mean, who ever thought that would happen?
He made his mark in that Kentucky game.
Yeah, he played at the level. He has the athletic ability, but then there's other games where he might have 2, 6. Yeah. Everything was clicking for them that night. But then there's other nights where, you just have no idea where the points are going to come from. So I think, and some of that is, I think the way Walt plays, he's coming from that pro style where if you're open, shoot it. I don't care if it's the first pass or the 8th pass. And in the NBA, when you have pros, I think you can do that a little bit more. With even though Evansville is talented, I think, and I'm not the coach and I'm not telling him how to coach. I'm just, as a fan, I think that he's going to have to hone in on a couple guys and say, these are the guys that we want to get our shots. We want them to get their shots. These 3 guys should be getting between 45 and 55 points a game, right? And make sure they're in a rhythm and be intentional about getting them the ball in their spots. And then the other guys are going to have to be the role players. And if they're inconsistent, that's fine. But if you got 4 inconsistent guys and 2 are on, 2 are off, but your main 3 are on, it gives you a solid base of what you have to do defensively. Like we're generally going to put up 65 points a game. Right now, Evansville could score 85 and they might score 45. It's just all over the place. But, beating Kentucky was the highlight. But obviously they've been humbled a little bit. So I just want to see how they respond and hopefully they can pull it together by the conference season.
Yeah. And there's a lot. I mean, it's November. I mean, we get to Thanksgiving, everyone's playing in these tournaments now over the holidays. We're about a month out from the conference season starting. So everyone's sort of getting their ducks in a row. But I mean, obviously for a league like the Valley, these are the opportunities used to sort of build the non-conference resume. Yeah. Unfortunately, it don't look like anyone sort of got that put together. I mean, Northern Iowa, they finally lost the game. They did beat West Virginia, or did they lose? I can't remember. They were at a MTE at a tournament.
Your Bears play Xavier tough.
Yeah. And you talk about inconsistent. Yeah. They're right there with you. Now, they had some injuries to start the year. I mean, they lost their first game of the season at home, which is something Missouri State rarely ever does, to Little Rock. I mean, they lost a home opener game to Little Rock. So that one sort of was like the preseason favorite. Yeah. And we're all, I mean, just like you, we're all like, this is the first year since 99. We're thinking of going to the tournament, and the brakes got pumped really fast. Yeah. But they've got a big guy, Gage Prim, that's sort of come back, and he's the difference maker. So they're hoping that, inside presence in the Valley, that's a big thing. Yeah, I mean, it's such a guard-oriented league, as you well know, to have someone with size on the inside that can sort of dictate things can be a difference maker. So we'll see. I mean, to me, and again, I worked for the Valley, I have nothing but respect for it, but is it a one big lead?
Right now, they're a one big lead.
Yeah. So
the only way they get into is if one team dominates the regular season, almost the way my 99 team did. We were 13-5 in the regular season, won the Valley by 2 games, and then lost in the conference championship game to Creighton, who, let's say, was tied for second place with Missouri State. So if there's one team that just starts to pick it up, dominates the Valley, it's possible they go like 17-1 in the Valley, then lose in the conference championship game.
And that's what it takes.
That's the only way they're getting into this year. Otherwise, it's a one bid league.
Right. Because we all know that's just the way it is. I mean, that's college basketball now. I mean, those opportunities for leagues like the Valley, you got to get real creative and get real different with scheduling. And if you don't take care of business for conference play and you don't have ranked opponents, strong strength schedule coming up, you got to just do what you want to do. So like I said to my friends, 3 days in St. Louis. Hopefully it's not 4 days in St. Louis. 3 days in St. Louis. let's just knock it out there and get to the NCAA tournament. So we'll see. It's like I said, Evansville, Northern Iowa, everybody just up and down the list. I mean,
Bradley, Indiana State has lost a few this year that I didn't think they would. I mean,
Southern Illinois won games I didn't think they would this year, and they've been competitive. So it's going to be interesting from a fan perspective to see that. But I mean, you're going to be calling games, so I imagine you're probably going to be doing research more and more as you get closer to your games on the schedule popping up to seeing these teams in person. But it should make for fun basketball, I guess. So, speaking of just the game in general, so we got a couple different rules happening now. I don't know if you've seen anything happen in the games you've done thus far, but the one that sort of got everybody up in arms is the flopping rule. Where it's now up to the officials to sort of, I guess their discretion about if a player is trying to draw a foul and did they flop, did they fall down intentionally, was it due to contact? These things weren't in play when you were playing. It's sort of like you go out there, and I don't want to say the game's not pure. I use that term with Mark Adams, but it's almost like, and are we diluting it by some of the rules that aren't necessarily just, down the line calls? We're putting the officials, giving them a 50-50 shot of how they're feeling that day, so to speak.
I don't like it all right now because I think it puts too much pressure. I wouldn't say pressure. It puts too much responsibility on the refs. You want the kids to be able to determine the game. And I also think it gives too much leeway for cheating, to be quite honest. If a ref is biased or, God forbid, if, he's being paid off or whatever, I hope that's not happening. But if he's biased and towards a conference or a team or whatever, that hook and hold, I was a part of that. I called a game where like if you hook a guy and hold and pull him down, that can be a tag. The flop, how can you really tell if it was a true flop or not? I mean, now if a guy is just faking, he's a horrible, horrible actor. I get it. But like we were talking about the call that really hurt Missouri State against Xavier in the corner. And, when they're saying that the shooter flopped, like I thought that it was going to be strictly more so on taking charges, guys flopping or playing defense in the post and the guy's like pounding you down and he just flops backwards. But when you're starting to call the flop on the shot as well, which Reggie Miller was great at that. Some people have stuck their foot out to make sure they get the contact. Man, just call the foul. Call the foul, but to add a tech on top of that or to, I think it just changes too much of the game and it's too subjective. I think I would rather just have the refs just call it the way it was.
And I think you said the key word subjective because you're taking the game. You're almost taking the ball out of the kid's hands now and saying, all right, I'm going to give you the ball, go down there and shoot 2 free throws. Like you just don't want to see that happen, especially with the game on the line. I mean, my worry is, and college basketball is my favorite sport. Like if I'm looking at all of them, I got college basketball top and I just hate to see that happen to somebody, and hopefully it doesn't, where there's a conference championship, conference tournament, opportunity in the NCAA or, in the NCAA tournament, because if it does happen at that point when the spotlight really gets shined on it and everybody in the country is watching that game, then it's just like, okay, we're going back and forth on rules. Like you just want to see some consistency.
Yeah.
So
I like some of the rule changes. I like the
3-point being pushed back.
I like that.
Because I actually don't like as many 3-pointers being taken. That's just me. I think it's becoming the NBA. I don't want to see the college become the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, well, it's happening slowly right before our eyes. But I like that pushing back. I like the coach being able to call the timeout. And there's some things I like. The NCAA is trying to experiment and make the game more exciting.
And I'm fine with that too for fans. I mean, heck.
But all this subjective stuff with the rules and like the hook and hold and the flopping and some of that. I think they should get rid of that.
Yeah. So the other thing that's got sort of everybody up in arms about college basketball and college sports in general, really, is not just basketball, amateurism and what's happening with the NCAA, and they're now going to take a look and form committees about looking at the opportunity for student athletes to sort of generate revenue off their likeness. That's sort of the way I've come to learn to say it in the real way, I guess. That's something a long time that's been discussed because, you got the universities. And the thing is, too, it's not the Missouri States or the Evansvilles of the world that is the big thing. This is the football playing schools that this probably more affects. And it's like, boy, what does it do to the Missouri States or the Evansvilles or the Bradleys of the world? Because are they left out in the cold? Because let's think about, in reality, what that kind of revenue will look like versus in Alabama or
Yeah.
Duke or North Carolina, because we're not a football playing school or, you know, a BCS school or a conference that's got, you know, 3/4 of the league went to the NCAA tournament bringing in all this money. It sort of changes the game.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, 2-part question for you. Think back to me that 98, 99, and you're having the season of your life. And would you think of creative ways to sort of generate revenue off your likeness? Is that something that you think, boy, if I were playing now in 2019 and I'm having the season I had in 99, boy, I'm going to go out and get a sponsorship with somebody on my own? Like, is that something you think you'd want to do? Or, you know, how do you see that?
Well, in 99, I don't think I would have, just because social media. But now with social media, being able to market yourself, and there's literally people on social media getting rich because they have X amount of followers.
They're influencers.
Yeah, they're influencers. So if I could get my follower count up and start making some money and then, you know, getting some exposure, why wouldn't I put that money in my pocket? I've come a long way on this whole amateurism thought, because 10 years ago, I thought that athletes should have been getting paid. And I'm gonna preface this because I feel like America and most people that I know are very black and white. It's like, you either believe this or you believe that. There's not like
the gray area.
Man, I live in the gray area, and the world is a whole lot of gray area, in my opinion. So I'm not saying my answer is 100% right, but I go back and forth between the kids are making these universities and NCAA a lot of money. And so maybe they should get paid. Then I also think some of these kids are getting, I see friends who are in their mid to upper 30s still paying back college loans, right? And so to be able to get an education for free and to be able to get that network, because when you're playing sports, you're going to run into boosters. You're going to, you end up being somewhat popular on campus. Having that network and being debt free, what is the value of that to be able to go out and get a job after college? And so maybe they shouldn't get paid. And then you have to take into effect the Title IX, like, how can, just because this sport is making a lot of money, well, are the field hockey players are going to get paid? Are the women's soccer players going to get paid? Then if we start allowing the kids to get money, like you said, it's going to go to the bigger universities. So these guys that decide to stay home, like I know when I was at SLU, Jason Tatum's final two was Duke and SLU. He wanted to, you know, he was considering being a hometown guy. So you got guys like Jordan Goodwin who are nearby, and some of these guys that end up staying home. I don't think you'll ever see the Steph Currys or the Damian Lillards or the CJ McCollums that made intentional decisions. Well, some of them were being under-recruited. I get that. So if you're under-recruited, but once you realize that you're good enough to go to a Power 5 school, you're going to leave the middle school, the medium level school or the small school, because you have more money to be made at a larger school. And I think it's just right now we see Evansville beating Kentucky. We see UMBC beating Virginia. We see Stephen A. Austin beating Duke. Why? Because the talent pool is spreading. It's not as concentrated as before, where all the big boys got all the talent. There's enough personal trainers and there's enough access to basketball where enough good players are going to places like Evansville has a kid who used to play at Kansas. DeAndre Williams is a 6'8", bouncy power forward that could probably play at a Power 5. You got other guys like that, and they're able to compete. You do this where you start putting money in kids' hands, and the only way they can make that money is at the power schools. It's going to go right back, and there's going to be no more parity. There's going to be no more. The NCAA tournament is so exciting nowadays because you have no idea who can win. That's going to go back to basically the whole first round. Go ahead and just pick the higher seed, you know, and it just, so I'm in the middle. I see why kids should get paid, and I see why they should not. I don't know what's the right decision, but I'm kind of 50-50 on it right now. I'm
with you. I mean, I see both sides. It's something when I'm on social media, I don't do politics on social media.
Right.
And when I see the conversation about amateurism and the NCAA and athletes being paid, I read about it, and I've never shared an opinion about it because I'm like, man, I root for a school that's smaller that this is going to have a different effect on versus, you know, rooting for North Carolina or Alabama or, you know, schools in the SEC with football. Like this is, it's almost like conference realignment. It affected football way different than basketball. Yep. And eventually we started seeing basketball decisions being made for schools like a Wichita State, like Creighton, schools going to the American, it's just different. Perspective's different. So I see it both ways. But
the one thing I will say, I hate when, and this is just ignorance. People are like, this is like slavery or something like that. They're getting free labor. Man, at SLU, it's $50,000 a year. That is $160,000 to $200,000 of money that you're being given. Trust me, these kids have training tables. So I know, like, you get food catered to you before, after practice. You're staying at 4-star hotels on the road. You're getting to meet boosters, expanding your network. They say your network is your net worth. So you're expanding your network at a dramatic level in college. And so even though they're not getting paid, they're getting paid. And all the shoes, all the, everything that they get. I mean, some of these schools, like if you're going to a school that's $40,000 a year, just the tuition alone, that's $200,000. I would say over the course of 4 years, and free meals and the travel, they're indirectly receiving $350,000 or more. And so
there's value in the education.
Yes,
there's value, especially when you think about the non-student athlete that is just there to go to school. Like me, I was just there to go to school. Okay. I mean, I get it. They've got a talent. They've got a skill that sets them apart, and I respect it. That's why I'm a fan of college sports. Yeah. But man, it's just, I struggle with the imbalance of people saying they're not getting anything. They're missing. I'm like, they got to pay for college. Yeah. They got all the gear. They got. I mean, they're getting opportunities. So
the gear.
I see both sides of it. Like I said, I'm not here to argue. Neither one of us are about it. So, we'll see what happens. I guess California's got their law, and other states are still talking about it. So,
but once one state starts doing it, everybody else is going to have to do it,
and then otherwise they'll be forced to play their hand in some fashion, one way or the other.
Going to have to. Otherwise, right now, if only California keeps it and Florida keeps it, USC and Florida and Miami and Florida State and UCLA are going to have a huge recruiting advantage over everyone else. So everybody's going to have to fall in line.
And eventually you're going to see the the bigger schools that are not a part of it and says, wait a minute, we got to do something to catch up. Yep. Because that's how it happens.
They're going to put pressure on their state senators and stuff. Hey, we are losing out here. Pass this bill. And that's what's going to happen.
All right. Well, we went almost 55 minutes. So before I wrap up, I want to give you a chance of this whole podcasting thing is where I'm looking at all my equipment here. It's funny because out of nowhere, you texted me and you were like, hey, I got a question for you. And you called. I was like, well, this is where I hadn't talked to him in months. And you're starting a little project of your own after the new year. So I'm curious how much you want to share what's going on, because like I said, hopefully you end up being able to do some of the things that I was hoping my podcast does of telling stories of unique people that or people may not know that, rise to the level of these are stories that, hey, when you're thinking about what you want to do, reflect on this person and see how they got there. Yep. It seems like that's what you're looking to do, but you're looking to take it to a video level and use some other connections that you've used, that you've gained from, playing basketball professionally, coaching, and what you do here at the Y. What do you got planned in the future?
Yeah. So so I need anyone listening to this podcast, I need you to tweet me or whatever. Coach Wilson 5. I'm still developing the name. I'll be honest with you. The two names I'm kind of going back and forth between is 5 Aces or From Way Downtown. But either way, I really want to bring in. I love Joe Rogan's podcast. And I know he already had a following because of UFC, but when you listen to Joe Rogan's podcast, I try to watch the video portion of the video part. But like, man, you just know, you never know who he's going to bring on there. I mean, he's talking to Elon Musk. He's talking to Jamie Foxx. He's talking to everybody. And some of it is just a day-to-day conversation about what's going on. I also would like to talk to people about what they're doing and what they did to get there and what are some of their habits throughout the day. Because I think people fail to realize a lot of successful people do a lot of similar things,
right?
In terms of reading extra books a year, going and having like an executive coach, getting up early, leaving late, being very high, having high emotional intelligence and what they do to develop their emotional intelligence. So there's a lot of similarities that I've seen in a lot of successful people. And I would like to talk to them about that. I'm not going to ask this, the same questions to people, but just try to get, allow their fan base to get to know them a little bit better, instead of just only talking about their latest project, talk about their life, talk about how they got there. And then obviously with me being in sports, I'm going to have, sports people in there, but I want to try to make it happen. And I like talking to people, so we're going to see how it works.
All right. Well, there you go. We'll look out for that. So I'm excited for you, man. We'll see how it goes. Like I said, we've been chit-chatting about software and equipment, and you're looking to go all out. So I appreciate people that are always willing to take the extra effort, because there are ways of doing stuff and just saying, I want to do this and get it out there, but there are ways of doing it and putting in 110% and doing it to your best effort. So a project like I can tell you from my own perspective of doing this podcast, I started in December last year. I'm like, do I want to do this? Can I do this? And I had this goal. I wanted to at least get through the year. And I didn't quite do it. I had a little bit of a lull in the summertime, but I think that was more because it was the summertime for my job. So I work in a school district. So it's summer break. So you work. You're like, all right.
Yep.
And that sort of happened with my podcast. I sort of hit that all right time. But I'm like, wait a minute, I got time to do this now. So I just sort of wasn't on the ball of scheduling out interviews and like things like that. But I realized the more I could prepare ahead of time, which is what you're doing, I could get things in a row. So I'm trying to get back into that spin of it, because I've gotten great feedbacks, and I appreciate everyone that's been listening to mine so far. I hope I can keep it going, but we'll see how yours goes. I'm excited for you, man.
I already have some people lined up ready to go in January, and man, to close up on what you're saying is this is the first time I feel like I have done something to invest in me since playing basketball. So I take it back to when my dad said, hey, you better get good at this or this. Yeah. And so I started investing in myself. Like, I need to get good grades. I need to start shooting 500 shots a day. And I did that. And then after that, went to college and, played professionally. But after that, I've worked for a company. I love working for the Y. I'm working, doing the color commentating, but I don't have my own business.
Right.
And I'm at the age where I really want to try to I wanted to start my own business. But this is a miniature version of that, to do what I love to do. If it blows up and I end up getting 100,000 followers and start getting sponsors and stuff, great. If not, it's still something I love to do, and I'm investing in myself, so I feel good about doing it. So I'm going to put time and make sure I do it right.
Well said. That's how I look at mine. I tell people every time, hey, it's just a personal project. I'm doing it just to, put something out there positive about people, because I just get tired of seeing negative stuff and stuff on Twitter that just gets to me. So I wish you best luck, sir. I appreciate you taking time to chat with me. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, and man, basketball season, you're going to be busy.
Yeah, I'm busy, but like I said, I love it, traveling around, calling games. And so, yeah, man, we'll hopefully I get better this year, and then I will eventually want to keep moving up. I want to stay with the Valley because they invested in me first. But if I could get some games with the Big Ten and the SEC in the next couple of years, that'd be a dream come true.
Nice. I'll be rooting for you, sir.
Thank you.
Marcus Wilson, person of interest.